Moving forward at a time when technology is at every doorstep and is changing the basic fabric of the way we approach life, it's time that we give ourselves choices and more. May I now introduce on stage Mr. Vidyut Bhardwaj, Director, the 3C Company, to join us for a very special address on sustainable design using modern technology to conserve natural resources. Let's put our hands together as I welcome him on stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sustainability, something which we learned from the past, from our ancestors. Technology is what we teach each other and teach us every day. And going forward, I guess, that's what life is all about. So I personally believe that, I personally believe that the way to do business in this country and across the world is going to be very different than what it now in the next 5 years. It's going to change drastically. But what is important, that it's going to change every year of the next 5 years. In any vertical, any business, any development we might do, if we're not with it, we're going to be without it. So friends, while I practice, preach, design and develop sustainability, we've come to a stage it's impossible to do it without an integration of technology. This picture at the back, what is it, when I look at it, what does it look like? What does it look like to you guys? It looks a little bit weird. It looks like a spaceship. Does it look like a cracked dish? What is it exactly? So when I look at it from here, I look at a lot of green, a lot of plants, self-growing, sustainable because it's growing by itself. Looks high-tech. It seems to be flying somewhere, or is it in the water? It adapts to the environment around it. So if you look at it, half of it is underwater, half of it is over water. It's got plants growing all over it. It's a combination of the language we all need to understand, live, adapt, and adopt in time to come. So I just need to find sustainable architecture. We all talk about what is sustainable architecture. And when I look at it, it's something which we've always been seeing, which minimizes environmental impact of buildings, efficiency, moderation of use of materials, the kind of materials, but this is something which we've kind of seen it all the time. And I'm sure like last many years when we started sustainable developments in this country, in a format which was structured, everybody's been through many times. Effectively, it's a combination of environmental, social, and economics. When you marry all this, we come to sustainable developments. At the same time, this philosophy of marrying all these three has been part of our heritage, part of our culture for many years. Somewhere 50 years down the road, say mid-1950s, we lost it. If you go back and look at the Havelis, the forts, they were all very, very green, continue to be so, in spite of being over many, many hundreds of years. So the entire efficiency of our entire life cycle of a building is the most important goal for sustainable architecture. This is the key, really. We need to be efficient in the kind of energy we use today. Earlier, we didn't even have electricity, so we were sustainable by itself. We were using only sun as energy, but that has changed, and we have to keep up with the times. And I always say that the soul of design will be constant, like a body. It's only the skin which changes, and you need to keep up with the skin, which is very important. So the idea is to reduce the consumption of water, wood, oil, iron, coal, so on and so forth. I always said, and I believe, that we talk about a barrel of oil, we should talk about a barrel of water. That's far more precious than a barrel of oil. Oil will get replaced by solar. So what they taught us actually in architecture was passive features. What our grandparents taught us was passive features. India as a country is a very green country. We've always saved rather than spent. Always we've been conserving rather than spending. In spite of the large influence we have of the West, even today, as a far more conservative society, in terms of how we use materials, what we do with them. I mean, you go back and you used to buy a TV and keep the box. You know, if you look at it, we've always done that. Okay? Today things are changing. Technology has got integrated in our way of lives. So when we look at sustainable developments, we divide it into passive features and active features. Passive is something which we've learned. Active is something, passive was always there with us, and active is something which we learn every day. So if we look at passive strategies, we look at sun directions, we look at the kind of sun which comes into this part of India or whichever part of the world you are working on, the kind of materials we use, the heights of the windows, the orientation of the sun, all these things get together. But when we look at active strategies, we talk about the kind of electricity we use, the kind of fixtures we use, the kind of air conditioning systems we use, even the kind of various pumps we use. So it covers virtually everything from water, electricity, air conditioning, which is essential for today's living anyway. So, we'll just skip through this because I've been asked to shorten it. So the kind of pumping systems, the chill water beams. But what we did was, while we continued to develop and design green buildings, we did a project called Shunya. This is a very interesting project. We took up 4 containers, ship containers, put them together, and decided to make a net zero home and call it Shunya. This exists in one of my sites. If you look at this, what we did was by using passive features, we reduced the energy requirement by about 85%. And then using active features, we fed that energy requirement through pure solar, and we had about 1,200 square feet, totally green, net zero home, centrally air conditioned, without electricity connection. I remember spending a weekend here. It was fantastic. In the middle of summer, all the air conditioners work, everything did. So we started by using these old containers, which were part of dumped actually from shipyards, put them together, and virtually in 24 days, we put this together into this. And I remember almost a few years back, I put this up at the Pragati Madan as an exhibition to share with people what we could do together. It was a piece of barren land, dirty. We put it together in 24 days, built it, and we had 52,000 people come and visit it. And after that, I got a bill from Pragati Madan for some 6 lakhs saying that you used our space. We were not charging anything. It was like what we were trying to do for people to come and have a look at it. So we had no option but to remove it and shift it somewhere else. So this is actually the 4 containers we put together. This, they obviously, it saved F-shed seats, F-sheds, air conditioning, lighting, appliances, everything kind of went in together. And that's what we really did. We used a lot of natural layrite. Courtyard is an integral part of what our history is all about. And courtyard is a feature, which is what we are all, our building should be all about in this region. So we used that part. We had naturally lit the whole thing. So virtually during the entire day, there was no light which was on. We put it together like this. So I'm just trying to show you some highlights of this. How we treated north, south features, windows, walls, and these are all the passive features. And then we started did a full energy analysis of the site, and we started using then where we started using the electronics, we started using the technology in it, is the kind of equipment which we put in. And in the end, we realized that what is required for heating, lighting, cooling, equipment, pumps, fans, everything put together was supplemented by the renewable energy which we were creating and became net zero, Shunya. This exists, and we wanted to actually model it in many army areas, because how nice it would be to just take these 4 containers, put up a house in less than 30 days, without any electricity and so on and so forth. That was all technology. We also used some old materials from my old house, from some factories. And we continue to use that. But once we did that, we said, okay, now what do we do next? Because we already at zero. So then we said, why don't we go energy positive? So that means we can create a place which will give back energy to the grid. When I look at this is actually a mother's womb. So that's where a child is really born. He's conceived. And that's the most protective environment which he lives in. And going forward, that's where his maximum learning starts. Or let's say that's where his learning starts. So we thought, why don't we make a school which is like Shunya, but is energy positive. So we designed the school. This is still under construction. If you look at them, they're actually like shells. All 3 of those are classrooms, multiple classrooms with shells, and the central block is the entrance reception. It's not a big school, but it's part of one of our developments. we thought we could create architecture which could look very nice, but the form which would adapt. What we are looking at going next is enrolled solar panels, which basically take the shape of the building. Instead of having those rectangle structures, the latest technology is they actually could just take the shape of the building and, of course, absorb the sun and the solar energy comes in. So this school is something which is being put up. And if you look at it, there are 3 clusters, and of course, the multipurpose hall. Each of these clusters has classrooms, and each of these classrooms is basically for children who are 2 years plus. So you want to initiate them at that level, because when they come out, really when they're born and they're just about 2 years old, if you initiate them to such initiatives, my experiences, and I've spoken at many universities, many schools across the globe, it's actually the younger people, the kids who are not only fascinated, who actually cling on to sustainability, try to practice it. And I'm seeing a big change happening in the age group starting from 5 to 15 rather than 40 to 50, which is very encouraging because we need to do this for the future. So that's what we did, and these are, what you're seeing are basically ferrocement sheets, and we are working on a concept where the solar panels in sheets will get adapted to this, and also the glass has got these solar wires running it, and you pull in the energy from the sun based on the direction and so on and so forth. It is going to be expensive to do that, but it's going to start giving us, it's going to be energy positive. It's going to start giving us energy back into the system. When we talk about building design software, what is important is lighting and daylight. It plays a huge role in today's day and age. The sun and the shadows, that's part of my passive features. The solar radiation, how it reacts, what happens. The climate analysis, airflow, ventilation, life cycle analysis. Today, with the technology available, it's very simple and very doable for us to use these softwares to analyze a building before it's born. So it's really like creating a genetically modified human being before you even conceive one. That's something which can be done in buildings today. And I believe that in time to come, buildings are going to have a soul, let's put it this way. They're going to be living. We have to make them living. They cannot be just concrete structures, because they have to give us back what we put into them. That's very important, because otherwise we're just deteriorating what is left of our earth, and we don't have many, many hundreds of years to kind of sustain this. That is the question. So if we look at a lighting analysis, okay, if you just look at lighting, now all these tools are available in technology, how to do a lighting analysis. We try to now design buildings which minimum have 75% natural daylight throughout the day, okay? Throughout the day, you don't have to have lights on. In my office, in my house, we have no lights on. In fact, my house, we have no lights on till it's evening, and we try to minimize that as well. That all happens in how you look at the lighting load. So actually what you do is you do a daylight analysis, and there's technology available to do that, quantify the amount of sunlight which is required for a project, and which are the various ways to get it in. So if you look at this structure on the left, virtually everything, right, gets covered by natural light. This is one of our projects, which is in Noida. I think it's Lotus Boulevard, yeah, there it is. So if you look at the plans of that project, this part, these are the apartments. Now you look at the shading look at the kind of reach of light it's getting into those apartments. All these apartments are naturally lit, and I've had a lot of people come back and say that we just don't put on light. So can you imagine when we talk about mass scale, and our Prime Minister Modi is talking about smart cities and smart green cities, once we start adding all these components where we can reach, it's huge. And still, we also have to identify that 35% of energy is used in building and construction form in one way or the other. And if we can save some part of it, it's a huge saving for us. So continuing with lighting analysis, you have various tools of looking at direct, semi-direct, indirect lighting, how it affects us, and everything is now available without any issues. All these are USGBC, I can see the USGBC logo there, or LEED certified platinum or gold buildings. All our projects are either LEED certified platinum or gold. This is a very interesting project. I remember many years back, I sat in a room with Mr. Patni, and he said, you've done work for Azim Premji, you've done work for Narayan Murthy, and you've made great green buildings for them. Why can't you make a green building for me? So I had the audacity to actually tell him that I don't think you as a company have a vision to make a green building. This is early 2000. And he got up and from the table in the boardroom and said, "What do you mean we don't?" I said, "Because you don't." He said, "I challenge you, you make us the greenest building in the world by the time you finished it." We took up the challenge and we did complete it. This at 2008, I think, was the greenest building in the world at that time. The big challenge for this building was a typical BPO spread over 1 million square feet. He said, "Vidur, I hate blinds because it reflects on my, because I like natural light, but the sun reflects on my screen, so what do we do?" So what we did was we did something very interesting for him. We normally have sunshades in all our buildings, right? We converted interior sunshades. So we actually created sun shading devices which were inside the building rather than outside the building. So we created light shelves. Each and every light shelf, the depth of the light shelf was designed using technology, how the sun is going to be moving there, how much light is going to come, and at what time of the day, and how can we deflect the light. So we actually created all false ceilings differently, the entire building. How can we deflect the light so that it doesn't hit the computer screen, but has forms of halo of light, which is what we did. So I think there were close to 5,000 people working here with 5,000 workstations, no blinds, nothing, and a lot of glass because the orientation was good. So there you are, one of the examples. You see no blinds, and approximately the amount of lighting which was used here was 40% what was required in a normal BPO setting. Going forward, now we have come to a stage where we motorize things. I've used this, in fact, in my house, where we motorize the light shelves and link it up through technology, through the building management systems, into the light which is outside, depending on the cloud, how cloudy it is, it's not, and integrating the entire system in such a way that the facade becomes an intelligent human being. It senses the light, senses the temperature, senses what the lighting required inside with sensors, with the occupation sensors, and actually starts moving by itself. So what you look at here on the left, actually louvers would start moving, and what you see there on the right is actually they start closing and opening up between the two. See, there's the same facade on both the sides. It's like an umbrella. It keeps opening and closing up the way you program it or the way it senses it. So now you can imagine from where we were and how technology has helped us to take the next leap. So when we look at a solar analysis that shows us how the form of the building is, what we are creating, and how the sun is going to affect it, how the light is going to affect it, how the air conditioning is going to affect it. And one of our projects, I'm going to pull this out. Let me come here. So one of these projects is a project called Green Boulevard, which in 2006 was the most green building in the world. And the biggest thing about this project, the way it was designed, was we did an extensive solar analysis, about 1 million square feet of space. And finally, what we landed up getting there was we did a lot of research on air conditioning there. We did a lot of research because this was a 24/7 building with a lot of IT companies and BPOs. So we did a lot of research on that to how to reduce the running cost. And what we achieved was that 1 ton of air conditioning would give us over 800 square feet of space, air conditioning space. In a normal building, 1 ton is required for 250 square feet of space. This took almost 800 square feet of space. So in spite of all that we did, we actually under-ordered our chillers, and still a 400-ton chiller was transferred from the site after it went live. This is pure use of technology, of solar and active components to put something together. Going forward, this is a traditional form of radiant heating. We started going to the next level where we started using chill beams. Chill beams are beams which run actually as beams on top. They're very effective. They use much less electricity. We did this for Azim Premji in a large 50-acre project we've done for them in Greater Noida, which we use these chill beams. Huge amount of, they take advantage of conventional air cooling as well as radiant temperature. So it actually senses the radiant temperature outside, pulls it in. Things are changing. So even radiant heating is there, but not in this part of the world, but we've done it overseas, which is really the next level. Then we talk about solar panels. So this is a solar farm. I don't know how many of you have seen a solar farm. This is the way things are done, and this is horrible. We've used up a whole lot of land to create solar farm to light up that piece. That's the way it was supposed to be done, and that's why solar is still not so successful in most parts of the world, and it's very expensive because it also takes space. But things are changing. So this solar arc is actually a building which is a large-scale solar power generator by itself. It's a facility. So the entire facade is solar panels. And what you see there is basically a glass facade which has got these solar, to simplify it, it's got these electrical lines in it, which pull in the sun. So things are changing from virtually that to virtually this. So things are changing. So this is the way things are done, and this is horrible. We've used up a whole lot of land to create solar farm to light up that piece. That's the way it was supposed to be done, and that's why solar is still not so successful in most parts of the world, and it's very expensive because it also takes space. But things are changing. So this solar arc is actually a building which is a large-scale solar power generator by itself. It's a facility. So the entire facade is solar panels. And what you see there is basically a glass facade which has got these solar, to simplify it, it's got these electrical lines in it, which pull in the sun. So things are changing from virtually that Now to this. And this is where technology is taking us. Going forward, wind is one of my favorite subjects which I've failed in completely because all the areas where I've worked, there's hardly any wind energy available. And India has great coastal line, and we are just not being able to make wind a success there. I don't know why, we're still trying to work it out, but the kind of comfort, the kind of power, the kind of electricity wind can generate is something which is going to be the next generation. If you go to Suzlon, you ask them for equipment, they are booked for 8 years, that kind of stuff. So it's very popular, very doable, but still very expensive. Now, I don't know if you people, I'm sure you people must have seen this building in Bahrain, some of you have, where they actually used wind because it was right at the edge of the sea. They used wind as a feature to pull in the power, and this is one of the modern examples of how they've used wind and technology together, and this is the World Trade Center in Bahrain. Well, this is just a small slide. I didn't want to put it, but I did because rainwater harvesting is something we all do at our homes. We can do it in a small place and a large place. And now there are modules available. We don't have to put up a full rainwater harvesting pit. You can continue to do it in modules. So it's kind of important to adapt to these at least. So, these are small modules which are available now. Materials. Well, we all want to save natural resources, materials. This is really one of the greenest buildings I've seen. This is an ideal example of a fort on a Haveli converted into a hotel. Because when you look at it, these are lying just like khandars. They've been there for years and centuries. And look how beautifully this has been restructured actually into a hotel. What is also important to understand that when we talk about green materials, we also need to look at what is the embodied energy of a material. We might say that steel is green because it can be recycled, but we forget the amount of electricity required to make it. So it's important to identify the kind of materials we are using, the kind of embodied energy that material carries. That's something which we always tend to forget because we look at those manuals which says this is this rating, this rating, but we forget to go behind and look at the history of this material. This is, of course, one of the library, one of the old churches converted into, a bookstore. This is interesting now. So what happens next? This is an example of actually a building in Taiwan where the facade is what you see is actually bottles. They're all bottles. Okay, this whole thing is bottle facade, and the rest is all steel. The cost of this facade was 50% the cost of what they had initially estimated it to be. Now this is innovation to a different level. So if I look what I wrote, it is said to be the world's lightest breathable environment miracle, this building. The 130-meter long structure is completely deconstructible. It can be taken apart and reassembled in another location. And look at the scale of this project. So that is where we are really heading to. Forget these materials, we all know about it, so we'll just skip this. Let me just pick out the future. That's one of the projects which we did. We used foam actually as deflecting for sun. So certain areas where the foam is punctured, we got the sun in, the rest of the areas we didn't. High performance glass. I'm going to come to a more, that's what I want. Nanotechnology. So what is nanotechnology? How do we adapt it? So we all understand what nano is, and how we go down to the atom and we analyze it in the molecule to see. But how do we do it in buildings? So when I talk about that these buildings should become like humans, I think that's where this is headed. This is the new generation. This is where we are headed to. So if you look at something like this, the glass is self-cleaning, okay? It's coated with TiO2, which is basically a coated glass. It cleans up the facade by itself. It senses the dust the glass has and starts acting accordingly. If you look at a thermal paint, which is so simple, this is a paint without glare, dark pigmentation paint that do not retain heat. So these are intelligent building materials used intelligently. They start acting by itself. So what happens is, while we design a building, now the materials we adapt because of the nanotechnology available to us, they start taking their own shape, form, and life. And I'll show you some more examples. For example, this is the Swinburne University building, right? This is a totally self-cleaning facade. It's concrete and it's cast and precast, and this whole facade cleans by itself. So actually now buildings are intelligent and they start now making their own decisions. This is actually like a gel. Now this gel is again part of what we've inherited from, what we've learned from nanotechnology, in which they act as thermal insulation, which is so light, it's virtually like paperless. But at the same time, it's one of the best insulation materials I have seen at least. Biomimicry, that's the next material of the world. So what is biomimicry? We actually look at what the nature offers us, and not only that we learn it, we adapted it, we start using it. So now, this is a building coming up in New York. It's got a hole in the middle, it's got light passing through and through. The plants they've started to use, we're planning to use, will start growing by itself, and this entire development is going to be a standout development, which is the height of being sustainable because it starts growing by itself. The entire thing gets covered. The core supports the weight of the building and allows sunlight to pass through the building to support plant life. That's really where we are going now. And this is actually the next material. If you look at this image on the left, the green and the gray, and that's the one on the green, what it does is, that's the facade of this building, right? The building has a skin which opens and closes. So you've seen these flowers which you touch and they close and they open, or leaves, right? That's what this is in terms of building form. This is biomimicry. This is where we all headed towards. So this is a prime example of the same building which closes and opens up depending on, so if it's sunny, it'll open up and get the light in. If it's raining, it'll start closing up. And it'll start, it'll keep the fresh air out because it's obviously raining. So this is where we are actually heading to. And the National Science Building is developing the self-activated building envelope. So these all building envelopes are self-activated. They're intelligent. They're like humans, right? If you go out in the rain and it's raining, you're going to come back or take an umbrella. The same thing the building does. Now, this is a material which are being developed to be able to renew itself, the same way as a human skin. So when we cut ourselves, after some time the skin heals itself. The same thing we are trying to do in regenerative plastics, inspired from self-healing property of the skin. That's what we are trying to get to, so that the building, if something happens to part of a building, it starts regenerating. This is all being given, this is all what our learning are from biomimicry. This is a science which is being developed. It's successful already in parts, but that's where we all headed. Well, they say that now we are creating robots who could be married to us and we'll probably have a happier life, or the other way around. So that's part of what people are doing for robots. And I was at this conference in Goa the other day speaking, and really they had 3 robots moving all over the place. So instead of Q&As where we send people out, the robots were sensing who were raising their hand, going there, and the Q was happening. Each of the robots only cost $2,000. So it's not going to be expensive anymore. And of course, we have the next material of the world, paint spray inspired from stem clean lotus leaves. So they're trying to work out systems. If you look at this, the leaves of the lotus plant remain clean and free of contamination, despite growing in muddy rivers and lakes. This self-cleaning ability has been the inspiration for many such biometric materials. So we're looking at nature, seeing how nature reacts to things, and actually trying to adapt it to building forms. So to me, honestly speaking, this is the next generation where technology is taking us beyond where we stand today. And I would like to say this, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. But at the same time, learning is never enough. And we need to learn every day of our life to adopt and adapt the technology we all live around, we all live for. So it's important for me to repeat one more thing. Business to do in this country is going to change in the next 5 years, but it's going to change every year of the 5 years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so very much for joining us, sir. May I request you to please come center stage, and may I also request Mr. Unikrishnan from St. Gobain to join us on stage and present, sir, with the token of our appreciation along with the Smart Green certificate. Let's put our hands together for him. A certificate to thank you for your presence, sir, and a memento along with the St. Gobain book, The History of the Future. Thank you, gentlemen.